I had always thought the worst part of a dream was watching it slip away. I know now the real sting comes from having that dream mocked until nothing of it seems worth loving. My story circles that wound, and if it healed, it did so with a scar. Even now, I can close my eyes and see the fat fluorescent tubes of my old office flicker white across the dull carpet, everything transplanted from some soulless supply catalogue. London weather pooled at the narrow strip of window sky the colour of dirty gauze. Inside, the world smelled of toner and old tea. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It really started the day Mr. Greenwood decided my existence was an affront to his sense of business decorum. It must have been a Tuesday. Meetings always clumped together then, each one a little more pointless than the last. I was near my desk, nervously fingering the camera in my battered backpack, when Greenwood stepped into the cubicle row. His shoes sounded like hollow authority on the cheap vinyl. "Louisa," his voice snapped like a cold towel, "could I see you in my office?" Everyone's heads turned. I picked bits of lint from my sleeve as I followed him past the fire extinguisher and a lingering smell of microwaved fish. His office was just a square with more windows and fewer reasons to smile. Folders were stacked in clean, accusing piles. "Sit," he pointed, then perched on the edge of his desk, tapping a sheaf of paper. "Louisa, I'm having difficulty understanding. Well, nearly half your focus seems elsewhere these days. I don't want to be unreasonable, but your sales numbers are." He tilted a chart my way and raised his eyebrows, uninspiring. My cheeks burned. There's something uniquely humiliating about failing basic expectations. He leaned in, voice lowering. "We need team players here, not distractions. I know you've got that silly hobby, taking snaps of puddles in Peckham or whatever. But we're not paying you to daydream about being the next Annie Leibovitz. This is a banking office, not an art school, understand?" I could feel the camera digging into my spine through the pack. I'd hidden with it on lunchtime walks, searching for perfect angles in city alleys, hunting stray gold in the rain. For a second, I wanted to tell him how every click of the shutter let me breathe again, but I bit down instead. His eyes glistened with a sickly sort of authority. He mistook my silence for submission. "Good, so focus up, will you? No more of these flights of fancy, or I'll have to reconsider your position." The rest of the office felt my shame before I reached my chair. Whispers folded over me like stiff laundry, shoulders edging away from mine. After work, a few colleagues gathered at the pub. I wasn't invited. My only company was my camera, lens fogging against the city's chill air. Funny that people think humiliation is a quick thing, a slap and it's over. But the ache lingered for months, a constant, slow bleed. Each remark, every smirk from my colleagues or sigh from my parents when I mentioned the camera, added weight to a stone in my chest. My mother in particular was relentless. She'd stared at my photos of Brixton backstreets like they were flunked exams, demanded, "When will you settle down, Louisa? Don't you think you're a bit old for this?" My father half listened over the sports pages but threw in, "It's not a real job, you know. You'll thank us when you're not starving." Sunday dinners blurred into lectures. My sister, poised and locked into her reliable teaching job, never said much, her silence a kind of agreement. If I brought up street photography, she chewed slowly and looked at the jam. Every disapproving look made me shrink tighter inside, but stubbornness, it turned out, was my lifeline. It kept me afloat as one humiliation bled into the next. I worked the office job by daylight. At night, I stalked empty corners of London, searching for the city's secret pulse. Half the time, I doubted myself. But there was courage in the hunting, this belief that maybe if I caught just the right moment, everything could change. No one could take that click away from me. After Greenwood's public scolding, I started to unravel. My numbers sank further as I poured all my spare hours into shooting, editing, seeking contests and open calls. Once I submitted a series, Rain Like Silver, to a small art magazine, and the silence in reply seemed to echo my worthlessness. Greenwood eventually ran out of patience. One Friday he stood me up in front of the team and recited my performance metrics. I watched my colleagues' eyes flicker between pity and relief it wasn't them. "We're letting you go," Greenwood finished, as if dispensing an overdue chore. Leaving that nondescript building felt less like an ending than a slow-motion free fall. Outside, the city roared indifferently. I phoned my mother. I almost heard her heart drop. "I told you, Louisa, this would happen. What are you going to do now? Look, you can come home, see sense, get a proper job." "No," I choked. "I have to try, I have to." She tutted. I hung up before she had the chance to keep talking. The months that followed were hard, soul-bruising, money-thin, bitterly cold. I scraped rent together with temp work, shot weddings I couldn't care less about, edited photos for exasperated realtors who wanted blue skies instead of honesty. Yet I never let go of my camera or the hope that London would reveal herself to me. I'd wake up before dawn, stalking past shuttered shops and rain-bright cobblestones, chasing slivers of golden light. Sometimes it was only pigeons and the whir of milk floats. Sometimes it was a life flickering in the cracks, an old woman cradling a mug at her window, a tired nurse laughing in a neon-lit bus shelter. I snapped, sometimes bleary-eyed, always hungrily. I submitted to magazines so often it became muscle memory, most ignored me, but every no was a quiet dare to keep going. I printed my photos on cheap matte paper and hung them with drawing pins in my bedsit, watching them fade as months darkened. My bank balance wheezed along. There were nights I broke. In a dim flat, clutching my camera, whispering into the heavy silence, what if they're right? Once a neighbor knocked, worried about the light under my door at 4 a.m., just finishing some editing, I lied. Even in the loneliness, the camera pulsed warm in my hands. My true break arrived so quietly I almost missed it. I'd shot a new series, 10 portraits of street vendors on my stretch of the Brixton Market. I titled it Unseen Hands. The faces radiated hardship and joy, dignity salted with exhaustion. I posted the series online at 1 in the morning. 3 days later, an email blinked into my inbox. "We love this, could you exhibit at the Open Streets Photography Festival?" It was from a curator in Shoreditch. I nearly dropped my tea. I read it again, hands shaking, as if those words would dissolve on the screen. Getting a spot in the festival meant the world, but I couldn't tell anyone, not my family. I'd shown so little progress, so many defeats. I worried even the faintest hope would provoke fresh ridicule. Still, the night of the opening, I ironed my only presentable dress and stepped into the pulsing Shoreditch crowd, heart tripping. The room buzzed with the scent of white wine and anticipation, strangers brushing close, conversations swirling like currents. At the far end, my own portraits glared out at me from a whitewashed wall. They were bigger than I'd ever seen them, every wrinkle, every bead of sweat and hope magnified beyond memory. People lingered, asked questions. For the first time, I talked about my work not as an afterthought but as something worth showing. Someone from a magazine jotted notes, a gallery owner gave me her card. Of course, there were tougher days to come. Rejection kept coming. But something inside me shifted. The outpouring at the festival lit a fire that survived the cold. I shot more portraits of night shift workers, buskers under London Bridge, women dancing at Notting Hill Carnival, their feet blurring into laughter. Each series got bolder. I scraped savings, built a website. Slowly, press coverage trickled in. One spring, an editor from The Guardian reached out. My series, Night Windows, would run in the weekend magazine. My photos were in print, my name glimmering beneath. I stood in the corner shop trembling as I held the issue, afraid the ink might vanish before I showed anyone. That summer, a photo agent called, staccato French accent slicing through my disbelief. "I have client in Paris, she wants exclusive rights for the new urban exhibition. These are beautiful, Louisa." I signed, payment landed in my dried-out bank account in thick black letters. For the first time since Greenwood, I wasn't worried about rent. The emails grew more frequent. Magazines abroad wanted interviews. Clients asked for shoots with a perspective only Louisa King could bring. Some months were lean, but the tide had turned. Years passed before the thought of home didn't taste bitter. I came to see my parents for holidays, keeping conversations neutral, letting my career drift unsaid between us. I stayed briefly, always with an eye on the exits. I sent Christmas cards, the odd signed print, none of it seemed to register as real. Then the phone rang one May morning. My mother's voice was wobbly, uncertain. "Your sister's put together a big birthday tea for your father, all the family. People coming from up north, your cousins, we hoped you'd come." She hesitated, then added quickly, "You could bring your camera, maybe take some family photos." Her tone was different, almost soft. After a pause, I heard my father's voice call out, "Tell her we'd like to see her, not her hobby, her." I said yes before I could change my mind. All the way to my childhood street, fear crawled under my ribs. It wasn't the journey, London to the dim trees of Surrey, but the knowledge that I would have to look everyone in the eye. The house stood the same as ever, battered green paint flaking from the window ledges, roses fighting through nettles. No one waiting outside, but I could hear laughter spill from the front room. Inside, it was a familiar blur of faces: my sister's kids wrestling on sofa cushions, cousins cradling cheap wine, an uncle in a tired suit nursing a soggy sandwich. My mother hovered at the kitchen table, dabbing flour from one eye. When she saw me, her face cracked into something close to pride. "Louisa, sweetheart, look at you. Oh, is that the famous camera?" She squeezed my arm, eyeing the strap. I barely had time to drop my bag before my Aunt Alice cornered me. "Still at that little photo thing? How's the job market? You know, Gemma's son just started in IT, pays twice the—" She stopped, catching my look. Instead of answering, I took out my camera and began snapping. The lens gave me protection and purpose. I caught my cousin's mid-cackle, captured the trembling arc of my grandmother ladling gravy, the sag of my father's cheeks as he listened to football results. At first some flinched, old habits, they weren't used to being seen. I wandered outside for air, escaping the small talk. Standing in the wee-driddled garden, I watched the grey afternoon slide across the window glass. A thrush pecked at crumbs by the step. The world felt smaller and wider at once. My sister found me smiling, holding out her phone. "You know, my friend Karen saw one of your photos on some art blog. She thought it was incredible. I think it's brave what you do." For a moment, her words, so small, so late, warmed me. Back inside, I realized the true test was yet to come. My mother had lined up the whole family for a photo, forced smiles on every face. When I lifted the camera, she straightened, then nudged my father. "Say cheese," someone called. I didn't say it. Instead, I caught the scene as it was: the awkwardness, the love, the uncertainty. I clicked once, twice, capturing the mess and truth, the blend of rejection and belonging. It felt like forgiveness. Then, as my father unwrapped his gifts, my aunt cleared her throat. "Louisa, dear, your mother showed us those photos on Facebook, but—" She trailed off, voice arch. I cut her off gently. "Actually, since I'm here, I brought something." I walked to my bag and pulled out a hardcover magazine, the Guardian supplement, and a glossy print from the Paris show. Their spines glimmered with my name. Silence snaked through the room. I laid them on the table. My mother gasped, turning the pages with shaking fingers, lingering on a portrait: a woman in Canary Wharf after midnight, her face incandescent with hope. My sister's kids crouched close. "This is you?" my cousin asked. "Yes," I whispered. "They published my work. It's in galleries, was in France last winter. People collect it." For the first time, no one in my family scoffed. My uncle blinked, mouth round. My father reached for the magazine, holding it like a rare bird. He stood up, clearing his throat. "Well now, look at that, eh? Our Louisa on the pages of The Guardian. Gallery in Paris, you say?" My mother's eyes glistened, voice barely above a tremor. "We had no idea, love. We thought you were struggling so, thought your photos were just, well, you know." I let the silence linger, the years of shame crowded in those hushes. My sister hugged me awkwardly, then grinned. "Can you sign my copy?" Laughter rippled around the room, gentler now, softer, the edge dulled. Slowly, I felt the weight of all those dismissals start to shift. I stayed the night, and over breakfast my mother fussed with my hair, asking about art folk and the next big exhibition. When the time came to leave, my father met me at the doorstep. "I'm proud of you, Louisa," he said quietly, squeezing my hand. "Stick at it, all right." I walked away lighter, the noise of the city welcoming me again. I knew not every wound could be patched up with pride, that not all skepticism could turn to applause. But when I glanced at my reflection in the rain-streaked train window, I saw someone braver than the girl who'd been humiliated under those fluorescent lights years ago. Someone who had learned the power of believing in a dream, even after the world tried to snap it in half. I never forgot the shame, I carried it as part of me, but with every click of the shutter, courage grew louder than scorn. And with each return home, I carved out a place in the world that belonged at last to me.